we are diving into a really important part of this thing. It's called the RE framework.
Okay.
It's, like a really well-organized kind of plan or a structure that people use to build those like software robots, the ones that can do tasks automatically.
Right.
And you've given us some info about how this framework gets set up right from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So today, let's really dig into that crucial first step. It's called the initialization phase, but people often just call it the init state for short.
Yeah, that's it.
What's happening in the init state? It's like laying the first bricks, right?
Yeah.
Getting everything ready.
Exactly. It's like setting the stage, making sure everything's in place before the main show starts.
Perfect analogy. So we're going to break down how it reads that setup info, how it gets the software ready that your robot's going to use, and even how it handles those hiccups that can happen right at the beginning. We'll be looking at how this framework starts from scratch and what it does the very first time your automation runs. Okay, so when this RE framework process starts, it always begins with this init state, right?
Yeah.
What exactly is happening at that very moment?
Well, like you said, at the absolute beginning, during that init state, the framework's doing a lot of behind-the-scenes work. It's the very first burst of activity getting everything prepped and ready to go.
Got it. And it looks like the first thing it does is look for this special file, this setup file, right?
Yes.
I saw something about a config file inside a data folder. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, you're right. The first thing it does is try to find and read this configuration file. And like you mentioned, it's usually tucked away in a folder called data, and the file itself might be named config or something similar. Depends on how you've set things up.
Okay.
This file is super important because it's like the instruction manual. It holds all these settings and constants that your automation needs to use throughout the whole process.
So like the robot's instruction booklet or its control panel, basically.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And what the framework wants to do is take all this crucial information from the configuration file and put it somewhere it can easily access.
Okay.
And that's where this thing called a configuration dictionary comes in. Now, when we say dictionary, don't think of a book full of words.
Right.
Think of it more like a well-organized list. It's a collection of these things called key-value pairs, kind of like labels attached to pieces of information. You've got the label, which is the key, and that points to the actual information, which is the value.
Okay, makes sense. So it's using labels to quickly find the info it needs later on.
Exactly. So all those settings and constants from the config file, they become these key value pairs in this dictionary, and that makes it super easy to find and use them later in the automation.
So this configuration dictionary, it starts off empty, right?
Exactly. It's like a blank slate when the process begins.
And it's the init state's job to fill it up with all the important details from that config file.
Yeah, that's the gist of it. The init state reads through that config file and fills this dictionary with all the necessary information. And there's a good reason for doing this.
Okay.
Centralizing the configuration in this way makes your automation so much easier to manage and update. Imagine if you had to hunt through tons of different steps every time you wanted to tweak a single setting. Having this dictionary keeps things organized,
Right, so you don't have to go searching all over the place if you need to change something later on.
Precisely. Now, how it actually reads that file, I remember seeing something about settings and constants sheets. What are those?
Right.
Okay, so the framework typically reads through different parts or sheets within that config file. These sheets are often named things like settings or constants, though it could vary a bit depending on how it's set up. And it goes through each line in these sheets.
Okay.
Usually on each line, you'll have a name, which becomes the key in our dictionary, and then the information associated with that name, which becomes the value.
So it goes line by line, grabs the name and the info, and adds them to this dictionary.
Exactly. It's like a systematic process, reading each row, picking up the key and value, and adding them as a pair to the configuration dictionary. There's also a neat little check in there to make sure that the row name, the key, isn't empty before trying to add it to the dictionary.
That makes sense. You wouldn't want to add a blank label to your settings.
Exactly. Now, I think this dictionary was called outconfig, right? So that becomes the go-to place, the main spot for finding all those settings.
You got it. Outconfig is like the central hub for all those essential pieces of information. Once the init state has done its job, everything your automation needs is stored right there, ready to be used.
Perfect.
Okay, so that's how the configuration gets taken care of. But the robot needs to work with other software too, right? I saw something about getting applications ready.
Absolutely. The init state does more than just read that setup file. It's also about preparing your robot to interact with other programs, the software it needs to actually do its work. Okay.
So this often means starting up and configuring any programs the automation will use. It builds on that foundation we just talked about with the configuration by making sure the robot has all the tools it needs.
Okay.
So it's like opening a specific program or logging into a website, things like that. Yeah, you got it. And to do this, there's usually a separate set of instructions, almost like a mini workflow within that init state, specifically for this purpose.
Okay.
For example, if your automation needs to work with stuff on a website, this is where you'd tell it to open the web browser and navigate to the correct page. I saw a mention of opening a browser for something called an RPA challenge. It's a popular way to practice automation.
Okay.
So instead of having these instructions scattered all over your main workflow, it's best to keep all these application setup steps grouped together in the init phase, right? Yeah, that's the recommended way to do it.
Okay.
By getting all the necessary applications initialized in the init state, you're making sure they're open and ready when your automation needs them. It prevents a lot of potential issues down the line. I see.
Think of it like preparing your workspace before starting a complex task. Everything's in its place, minimizing the risk of interruptions or errors.
So you're saying it's kind of like getting all your ingredients ready before you start cooking.
Exactly. You wouldn't want to start a recipe and then realize halfway through that you forgot to chop the onions.
Right.
Same with automations. You want your applications ready to go when you need them.
Makes total sense. Now, what about things like web browsers? I noticed a mention of controlling whether they close automatically. What's that about?
Right. For applications that use a web browser, you can usually choose whether the browser should close on its own after it's done with its task. In the init phase, though, the standard approach is to open the browser once and keep it open throughout the entire automation run.
Okay.
You wouldn't want it constantly opening and closing, especially if your automation has many steps that use the browser.
Right. That would just waste time and resources.
Exactly. And another good practice is to use messages to confirm when applications have opened correctly. I saw that mentioned too.
Yeah, that sounds really helpful for keeping track of everything.
Absolutely. It's super useful for monitoring your automation and troubleshooting any problems. Having a clear message confirming that each application has been successfully opened right at the beginning in the init phase gives you that valuable feedback early on. It's good for debugging.
Oh, for sure. Now, this next part sounds intriguing, dealing with assets. What are those in this context?
Okay, so assets are basically pieces of information that are stored and managed in a central location. If you're using an orchestrator to manage your robots, which is like a central control system, that's usually where these assets live.
Yeah.
They're like shared resources that your robots can access as needed.
Right.
Think of it like a secure vault for important information.
So instead of, say, typing a password directly into that config file we talked about, you might store it as an asset.
Exactly. That's a perfect example. Assets are often used for sensitive stuff like usernames and passwords, but they can also be other types of information like website addresses, API keys, or any other piece of data that your robots need to use.
Okay, and how does the init state handle these assets? Does it go and fetch them?
Yep, the init state can be set up to retrieve specific assets. There might even be a dedicated section in that config file, maybe labeled assets, that lists which assets the automation needs to grab. For example, it might look for an asset that contains a specific website URL that the robot needs to visit.
And once it gets these assets, what does it do with them? Puts them back into our configuration dictionary.
You got it. The values from those retrieved assets also get added to that central configuration dictionary. So just like the settings and constants from the config file, the values from these assets are readily available throughout the automation process.
That makes sense for things like website URLs. But I did see a note about password type assets being handled differently. Why is that?
Right, that's super important. Password type assets, which include both a username and password, need extra security. They aren't usually stored directly in the configuration dictionary like regular text assets.
Okay.
There are usually specific built-in tools or more secure methods within the framework to manage those sensitive credentials, making sure they are not exposed in the same way as other configuration data.
Got it. So for simple data, the assets section in the config file and the configuration dictionary work together, but for sensitive login info, there's a more secure, dedicated process.
Precisely.
All right, so that covers assets. Now, this next part is about ensuring a clean start. It's labeled killing existing processes. What's that about, and why is it important, especially on that first run?
Great question. So when you run the automation for the very first time, the framework might include a step to shut down any instances of the applications it needs that are already running. It's like clearing the table before setting it for dinner, you know?
Makes sense. So if your robot is going to use a specific browser like Chrome, it might first look for and close any open Chrome windows. Why only on the first run, though?
Primarily to ensure a clean slate. You want to avoid issues that might crop up because of like old browser sessions, leftover data, or those weird states that applications can sometimes get into. Starting fresh helps prevent conflicts or unexpected behavior.
So it's like making sure the robot isn't inheriting any baggage from previous sessions.
Exactly. Imagine you're starting a new project, but you're working in a room cluttered with stuff from a previous project. That clutter could distract you or even lead to mistakes. It's the same with automations.
Got it. So this closing process is usually only done during that initial run, right?
Yes, you don't want to accidentally close something important that someone might be working on if the robot runs again later. That could lead to some unhappy users for sure.
Yeah, definitely don't want the robot to suddenly close a spreadsheet someone's been working on all day. All right, moving on to managing consecutive system exceptions. This sounds like it's all about handling errors right from the start. What are system exceptions exactly?
So think of system exceptions as underlying technical problems. Maybe a file is missing, the network connection drops, or an application throws an error. These are things that can happen at the system level, not necessarily something wrong with your automation logic itself.
Okay, and if these errors keep happening, especially at the beginning, that could indicate a bigger problem, right? How does the framework deal with that?
You got it. The init state has a mechanism to handle situations where the automation encounters repeated system exceptions right at the start. And it's clever about it. There's typically a setting that determines the maximum number of consecutive system exceptions allowed.
So it's keeping track of how many of these system errors happen one after another during the init phase.
Exactly. And if the count goes over that limit, the framework understands something's seriously wrong and that continuing would be pointless. So what does it do? It throws an exception and stops the whole process in its tracks. It's a safety measure to prevent the automation from getting stuck in a loop of errors.
So it's like a circuit breaker. If it sees too many issues in a row, it trips the breaker and shuts things down to prevent further damage.
Precisely. It's all about ensuring the robustness of your automation from the get-go. I've actually seen cases where automations got stuck in endless loops during initialization, say, due to a temporary network glitch. This mechanism would have prevented that and saved a lot of wasted resources.
Smart. It's really impressive how much thought goes into making this framework reliable. Now, the last point we have here is max retry number, and it mentions that it's more conceptual during the init phase. What's that all about?
Right. The max retry number setting mainly comes into play later when the framework's dealing with individual work items, but it's actually configured and stored during the init phase. It's essentially a rule that determines how many times the framework will automatically retry an action that failed due to a system exception.
So the framework is like, okay, I'm going to try this up to max retry number times, and if it still fails, I'm going to give up and move on or report the error.
Precisely. It's a way to handle those occasional hiccups that can happen when dealing with external systems. Now, if you're using an orchestrator and working with queues, the way those queues handle retries usually takes precedence over the max retry number set within the framework.
Got it. So even though it's used later, the groundwork for those retries is laid during the init phase.
Exactly. It's all about being prepared.
So it seems like the init state is so much more than just a simple starting point.
You got it. It might seem basic on the surface, but it's truly the foundation for the entire automation process. It's where the robot gathers its bearings, loads all its essential settings, prepares its tools, that is, the applications it needs, and even has built-in ways to handle potential issues right from the start.
It's like getting all your ducks in a row before you set out on a journey.
Perfect analogy. A well-designed init state ensures a smooth and efficient journey for your automation. Think of it like this. If you start your day organized, with everything you need in place, you're much more likely to have a productive day.
So what's the main takeaway here for someone who's just starting out with the RE framework? What should they focus on during this init phase?
The key thing to remember is that the init phase isn't just a formality. It's crucial. Getting it right, making sure those settings are accurate, applications are ready, and those error handling mechanisms are in place. All of this is going to have a huge impact on how smoothly and reliably your entire automation process runs. It's like building a house. A strong foundation is essential for stability.
It's amazing how something that might seem so basic at first glance is actually so fundamental to the success of the whole automation. Now, this initial deep dive into the RE framework's init state has raised some interesting questions for me. For example, how does that configuration dictionary we talked about actually get used in the later parts of the automation? And what are some of the different types of errors that can pop up later on, and how are they typically handled?
Excellent questions. Those are exactly the things we'll be exploring as we dive deeper into the other stages of the RE framework. That configuration dictionary is a central point of reference, making those initial settings easily accessible whenever they're needed. And as for handling errors later on, the framework has specific ways of dealing with different types of issues in each stage, ensuring that the automation can either recover gracefully or stop in a controlled manner. It's all designed to make those automations as reliable as possible.
Well, this has been a really insightful look at that crucial first step of the RE framework. It's clear that a well-designed init state can save a lot of headaches down the road.
Absolutely. The init state really showcases the careful planning and design that has gone into building this framework, with a strong focus on robustness and reliability right from the get-go.
If you're eager to learn more, remember all the resources we've mentioned today are available in the description below, and we especially encourage you to check out the actual RE framework structure in UiPath Studio. It's a great way to get a more hands-on understanding of what we've discussed today. This deep dive has only scratched the surface of this powerful framework.
With this understanding of the crucial init phase, consider this. How might even a small oversight in the initial setup lead to bigger problems later on in your automated process? It's a reminder that paying attention to the fundamentals is always time well spent.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, happy automating.
Happy automating.